Okay, let's get going. So, hello to everybody that is on the call today. Very nice to see you. Thank you for making the time. So I'm going to start off with a very quick context set as to kind of why and what we're doing today. So for those that know, I'm sure all of you do, we've obviously welcoming back learning technologies for the first time in a couple of years post-pandemic. So delighted to be all seeing people in London for those attending. And we're going to be at our stand C60 over the next few days, so please come and see us. But what we wanted to do is also to give a kind of opportunity to provide some value before the exhibition and also to those people that might not be attending. So that's why we're doing this webinar. The session's really intended to provide value around enthusiasts, I suppose, of the learning technology space, but also those people that are thinking about selecting new systems or have already got systems but are thinking about how to get the most out of them. We've got a couple of brilliant experts and favourite friends of ours who are going to be on the call, which I'm going to introduce in a second. And yeah, we want this to be a really interactive session, guys. So please do make sure that you make the most of the polls that are there. Do ask questions throughout. Teresa and Sarah are real experts in the space. So do ask great questions. You'll get some great answers. And we're also going to be doing something called snowstorming, which I'm not sure if anybody knows, but maybe Teresa, you're the person who actually introduced the concept to me. So maybe you can tell the room what it is.
Yeah, so rather, if you type your answer to a question in the chat, but don't press send, and then everybody will send at one time. So it just makes it, changes the dynamics up a little bit and makes it a bit more fun.
Nice, and we can kind of see a flurry of what people are saying, so people can't kind of be too careful about what they're answering. Put it all in there and we'll do it all at once. Okay, so in terms of the people that we've got on the call today, so Teresa, who you just heard from, Teresa's founder and director of Consult Her, a learning performance consultant who works also as a business and executive coach. She's got 15 years of experience in workplace people development, worked with the likes of NHS, E.ON, GlaxoSmithKline, DNV, HSBC, Cambridge University, the list goes on. And Teresa's really kind of encompasses everything to do with program design, large scale kind of global change programs and transformation projects, particularly in the use of digital learning technologies. And Teresa, you're an avid fan yourself of learning. You do lots of kind of learning outside of outside of kind of the work as well, right?
I do, yeah, probably too much sometimes. So I have to stop. I have to reach a point as well. Stop.
Yeah, binge learning. It's easy to do.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly. Well,
but not Netflix style.
Exactly. Love to have you on the call. Really good to have you. And the other person we've got is Sara. Sara Warrillow. Sara's the founder of Marvellous Learning, which offers an innovative partnership approach to digital learning solutions and services. Also got a huge amount of experience, over 20 years in learning and development, again with special interests in digital learning, working with organisations again like HSBC, Royal London, Sodexo, Vodafone, as well as many more as well. And Sara, again, hugely passionate in the space. Where are some of the places that you go for your learning?
Oh gosh, I look for learning opportunities everywhere. Even just walking down the street, I am literally always scouring for learning opportunities.
Great, love it, excellent. Put you on the spot there. And we've also got Jack, who's on our team as well, and the customer education, who's going to be helping in terms of calling out people's questions. So we know what we're doing, we know who's on the call, so let's get going. I'm actually going to hand straight over to Sara, who's going to kick us off. And we know that the learning technology space is a bit of a maze. So what we wanted to do is kind of really talk about what are the trips and falls that you could make, and what are the kind of learning hacks and techniques that you could take forward either into learning technologies or kind of more broadly when you're looking at the learning technology space. Over to you, Sara.
Thank you. Okay, so yep, I'm going to be talking about navigating the maze of learning technologies, and I want to start with a little bit of a journey. So whether you're at learning technologies this year, or you're looking for a new learning platform or content solution, you are going to go on a bit of a journey, and you could quite easily end up being this poor little face in the middle of the diagram. So dazed, confused, mind blown. You will get excited. You're going to see some amazing things. The trick really is to keep your focus, and that's what I'm going to help you do and talk through for the next 10 minutes or so. You're going to see lots of different platforms. So you'll be seeing things, you'll be exploring, you'll find some critters. I guess the key is, I call it get a good deal. So the deal is a simple model that you can use whilst you're navigating. So the Discover is all about discovering your needs. So what is it you're actually looking for? What do you want? What do your users want, more importantly? You then start exploring. So this is where you might find the critters. So looking what's out there. You'll explore the floor at learning technologies. You might explore other ways if you're not going to learning technologies. There's a little cross in the middle of the screen there. That's kind of stop and pause point before you then move into assessment. So you'll start to find platforms that you like. You'll start to assess. You'll start to whittle them down and get a short list. And then the final stage of this simple model is about learning. So is this what we need? And doing a bit of exploration before you actually make any final decisions. But the key really is to stay focused, have a plan, stay on track. So to keep you on track, there's a few things that you can do preparation wise. Think about what you really, really need. How does it align to your business strategy? What are the expectations? And that's not just your expectations, but the expectations of your stakeholders, your users, and anybody who's going to be using that platform or content. There's nothing worse than promising an engaging, intuitive platform and turning up with something that looks like it's come from 1990. And you could potentially do that if you don't keep that focus. So 4 things, simple things, Moscow requirements. What are the must-haves that you need? These are your deal breakers. So these are the things where if you don't have them, you just walk away because you absolutely need this for your system to be a success. What are the should-haves? You should have some more negotiables. So it's things that you'd like, but actually, if it's not there, you could potentially work around it, or you could move on and you could negotiate that point. You could have, this is your glitter, your cherries. These are the really nice things that just top it off. These are the things that actually, if it doesn't have these, that they're nice to have, but not overly important. They're not going to stop the platform from being a success. And then finally, your red flags. So your deal breakers are obvious red flags, but then look for the not so obvious red flags. So things like, what's the responsiveness like that you're getting from the vendor? Are you being given the correct information? Are things being hidden from you? And that'll become more apparent as you move through the process, and we'll talk about hidden costs. But just think about, what are those red flags for you when choosing both a vendor, a platform, a content solution that you're looking for. And it's like a shopping list. If you were going to bake something for the first time, you'd probably have a shopping list. If you don't have the shopping list, you might get something that tastes a bit funny, doesn't look like it should do, or you might get lucky and get something that's nice, but chances are if you try it again, it'll be different again. So just have that shopping list and absolutely stick to it.
That shopping list really resonates with me as well. If I go to the supermarket without a shopping list, I always inevitably buy double what I need and never the stuff that I actually came in for, right? So yeah, no, I think that's a great analogy.
Okay, so again, validate those requirements with your learners. There's no point buying a skateboard if you want to go surfing. It's not going to work. You can take the wheels off it, you can put it in the sea, but the chances are you're not going to be surfing at the end of the day. So think about, what do your users want? What do they expect from the platform? How do they like to learn? So early user groups is always a good idea. Finding out what apps do they use on the phone, what draws them back to an app, what type of thing is it that really gets their engagement. And also from your point of view, think about it at the end of this. How do you want your users? What do you want them thinking differently, feeling differently, and doing differently? Is your platform, is it going to be development led? Is it compliance led? Is it skills led? Is it UX led? There's lots of different things to think about, and it all feeds back to that shopping list, but making sure that shopping list is right for you and your users.
Fantastic.
So money, I have bags of money to spend on my new learning system, said no one ever. Think about your budget. What does it include? Is it just a platform that you're looking for? Actually, are you looking for content to host on the platform? Do you want an authoring tool to create your own content to host on the platform? There's lots of different things to think about when you're thinking about budget. Is there any internal budget that you need? Do you need to pay internally for tech support, for data help? Have you got a HR system that actually we know we're going to have to link something up from the HR system to the learning platform, and that's going to have a cost attached to it. So just consider all elements when you're looking at the budget. And I've got a question actually for everybody here, which I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on. If you're looking for a learning platform and you're asked the question, what's your budget? Should you be sharing it?
Great, that sounds like a snowstorm to me. So everybody in the chat, please, is this something that you would expect to share with a partner like us, I suppose? Do you think it's helpful to share? Or is that something that you think that you need to keep back yourself? Okay, snowstorm, everybody write it in. What are people's views? Well, I think we're going to go with hidden, seeming nobody seems to be hiding there or giving the game away here. Oh, keep back. Interesting. Okay, anybody else? No? Thinking not to hide it or thinking to hide it. Interesting. Anybody else? Do you think it could be helpful? All right. No, clearly no. Everybody's a bit secretive about that particular point.
Excellent. And I don't have an answer for it either, Joe. I'm just very interested to see the
What would be
views
the
on
benefit, do you think, Sarah, if you did share the budget?
I guess it sets expectations from the start. So if you are dealing with a vendor and you've got a high total cost of ownership, you can very quickly eliminate that vendor if it's not right for you.
I think also from my perspective, it's quite helpful because then you know what you're kind of playing with, and also what the total budget is. And there's always things that you can maybe take out of the system, or you can add other things in. So I think it does help the partner, the vendor, to be able to maybe be a bit more creative with you. So I think that would be a plus point for my side, but maybe I would say that.
Yeah, and I guess, sorry, Joe, just one watch out on that. If you are sharing, just make sure that the cost you're sharing is for the platform and doesn't include everything. Otherwise, you might have that mismatch of expectations on what's available.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The other thing that I think most people don't consider enough is also the time that everybody spends and the salaries involved in all of those people as well. So yeah. Okay, so let's go through to the next point. And yes, we've had a very good point, which was if people don't know on the snowstorm to press send and actually send it through onto the chat, please do that as well. Great, over to you, Sarah.
Okay, so we've done the discovery. We know what we're looking for. Now we start exploring. So this is the fun bit, the window shopping. Go shopping, ask lots of questions, have your shopping list handy. A few tips if you're going to learning technologies and don't know where to start. Fosway offers some good guidance. There's a 9-box grid. If you start with that middle row, it kind of puts you in that middle entry point. So you'll see some good vendors listed, and that's probably a great place to almost go see those vendors if you're not sure where to go. A watch out on Fosway is if you do see something that you don't like and it's not on the grid, it doesn't mean it's a bad product. It just means it's not on the Fosway grid. Get a learning technologies brochure, have a look who's there, highlight who you want to go and see. Almost have a shopping list for learning technologies. So these are the people who I must see. These are the ones who I'd like to see, and navigate it that way. I guess.
And this definitely looks a bit like learning tech. It's got enough colours and vendors and all the rest of it. In your experience, Sarah, how much do you think people stick to that shopping list, or do you think that they end up still getting distracted away and maybe adding a few more things in, or maybe not quite sticking to those must-haves because they get a little bit intoxicated by a conversation they've had?
Yeah, so I've been before with clients actually, and we've been to stands and they've walked away and gone, wow, that was amazing. And then I go, okay, let's look at the shopping list. And it doesn't do half the things on the list. So it's really easy to kind of get wowed, and we'll talk shortly about the bright lights versus the focus. But I think, again, top tips, don't be afraid to say no or walk away. If you're looking at a platform and it's not right for you, the time is really precious there. So kind of be polite and walk away if you need to make sure you get through that shopping list.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but killer questions as well, right? Making sure you've asked the right questions to the vendors as well. Yeah,
definitely. And as well, if you don't like what you see, don't get scanned. If you get scanned at Learning Technologies, you're inviting that phone call, the email, the next steps. And unless you've got a really good memory or very extensive notes from Learning Technologies, you could be inundated with calls and emails the following week. But the bright lights,
the ones you think are going to be helpful, yeah.
Definitely. If you see someone you like, just make a note of it so you can then filter it when you get back to the office. The bright lights are going to call you. You'll see freebies, you'll see spinning prize wheels, you might see fluffy teddies, ice cream, smoothies. Everything is going to be there to draw you in. But again, it's back to keep that focus and think about what it is you're really there for. I guess another call out is sometimes you'll see really big stands with lots of things going on. Sometimes that just means there's a big marketing budget there. So those bright lights absolutely are budgeted for. They're budgeted to draw you in and pull you in. And sometimes
you could also say that they might be suggestively, they might be also true of the business, you know, the kind of people that have been in the space a long time. That doesn't necessarily mean that the platforms themselves underneath it are that innovative maybe, or that cutting edge, you know, because people have been in the space for a long time. So yeah, I'm totally with you. I think it would mean many different things.
Yeah, and I think it's almost, to some extent, it's that big ship versus a small yacht and the agility. And actually, when you work with some of the smaller vendors, you can tend to find them more responsive and changes can be made quicker because you're a lot closer. You're not just a drop in the ocean to the big ship that takes a long time to turn.
Yeah, totally agree.
Just the other watch out on that one is sometimes vendors do stretch the truth. So just be careful, but we'll get to that as a later stage when you start learning and assessing. Hidden costs, there will be hidden costs. This is all about asking the right questions. What are the license costs based upon? So for example, is it active users? Is it a fixed price for so many users? I've seen instances where people have been told, yes, you've got 2,000 staff, but you only need 1,000 active users. But then when you go over, you're charged extra for that. So just be really wary. What's the base cost? When you start talking about costs, are there extras? Is implementation included? Is there extra for a single sign-on configuration? What does implementation look like? So again, just really get to those questions and get underneath the surface of what you're buying.
Yeah, I think it's other little things as well, like the nuance of how do your licenses really work, and what is a deactivated, what's an activated, how does it work when you're actually having to then pay for that? And yeah, I think there's lots of stuff that happens. You know, what's the different cost of users? You know, lots of people charge differently for admins versus learners versus, there's lots of things really when you get into the nuance of it.
Yeah, and I've seen people actually go all the way through the procurement process, get right to the end, and the vendor's gone, oh, if you want that bit of the system, it's going to cost you an extra £10,000. And this is at the end when the client's been, oh yeah, we've got the system, we found it, we love it. And then this extra cost comes in right at the end.
That's incredibly difficult for you to then justify or take back internally as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's not good. Terms, you're going to hear lots of terminology traps. So you'll hear skills taxonomy. Skills is a bit of a buzzword at the moment. So lots of people are talking about skills. Skills really important, cross-transferable skills, but actually look into what does skills mean? Is it that somebody tags something and, oh, that presents a skill to me? Or you'll probably hear skills powered by artificial intelligence, personalized learning, adaptive learning. There's lots of terms out there to draw you in. But again, go back to that shopping list, not the terminology, and make sure that that shopping list is met.
And also, I would say do your research on these businesses as well. You know, the amount of people that call themselves LXPs, but I always say, you know, a leopard can't change its spots, and actually LXPs are fundamentally about the difference in their structure and the way that roles work and permissions and all of the rest of that. That doesn't always come out when you're talking to people that actually really were LMSs. Jack, you've got a question.
Yes, hi. We've actually had a question come in for Sarah. Just basically, what is the biggest mistake that you see that some people make when they're selecting a system?
I think there's a couple of things there. One of them is the requirements, and I know I've talked about it a lot on this call, but absolutely being clear about what you want and those must-haves not being negotiable on them. Even if you love the platform and you love the way it looks, if it doesn't do what you fundamentally need it to do, it's not right. And sometimes it's really hard to walk away. And I've seen people walk away from platforms they love, but then implement one that actually they equally love, and it does everything they need and it works so much better for them. So yeah, just always go back to those requirements and make sure you are getting what you need.
Can I just add on to that as well, is then testing those requirements fully? Because I think one of the things that always is difficult on our side as a vendor, as a partner, is if that doesn't happen, then there's a mismatch of expectations. Then both sides, you know, find that painful in terms of kind of implementation and making sure that things work. So do fully test and make sure that you've taken ownership for that before you do select a system.
Yeah. And also, sorry, just adding again, Joe, but reporting, people often leave reporting right till the end.
Yeah.
And actually think about, if there's nothing else, list down your top 3 reports and data that you're going to need from the system and make sure you can get it. Because quite often the reporting does it, it pushes out, then it pushes further out. And when you get round to it, it can just cause a big headache.
Yeah, totally agree.
So moving into the assess stage now, a few questions here. I think my advice would be have 3 to 5 killer questions to ask each vendor. And again, you'll start to see comparisons as to how people answer those questions. But things that you can ask is, you'll hear, oh, we measure engagement. Well, how do you measure engagement? Is a click really engagement, or is your engagement people coming back and reusing the platform? But get a feel for what that means. Demonstrating return on investment is always one. Again, how does it demonstrate return on investment? What can you get that really helps you to see that? Take a look at the admin side of the platform. Quite often you'll get shown the super user interface, which has been designed to have the wow factor. Admin side's not so much, but have a look, make sure it feels comfortable and something that you could work with. Ask about the support team. Sometimes you'll see if you've got a sales team of 50 and a support team of 5, you can quite quickly get a grasp of, yeah, how quick am I going to get the answers that I need if I need help? And then the final one is the free trial. And this, I think, links back to what you've just said, Joe, but actually checking and testing and making sure it can do what you need.
Definitely. Great.
And then the final phase is the learning. So you've got your free trial, jump in and lose yourself. Absolutely. Get in there, try the platform out, have a go, see what you can do, create some test pathways, pop some learning in there, and speak to your learners. Just flick
Great.
over,
Jack, another question.
Yes, I've got another question for you. This one's slightly off this topic, but if you're not in the market for a new platform, is it still valuable to go to the event? And also, what else can you get out of the experience?
Great question.
So there's a couple of things. I think even if you've got a platform, it's always good to go and see what else is in the market, because at some point that platform's going to be up for renewal. And if you're not getting what you need from it, it's good to go and explore what else is out there or how the market's evolved. It could be 5 years since you last looked at learning technologies, and actually a lot can happen in 5 years. So I guess the value is going out there, seeing what the new technology is, seeing how it works, seeing actually, can I use that and bring it back? Is that something that I want? And also from a content point of view, there's a lot of content providers there too. So it could be that you've got a platform that you're comfortable with, but actually you want to refresh your content. You want to do something new there, but it's worth going. And I guess the other thing, the the peer-to-peer learning, speak to people, go to the free seminars, listen and learn from them. So back to your earlier question, Joe, where do I learn? I'll certainly be sitting in some of those free seminars to see what I can pick up from them.
Well, come to ours as well. I mean, that's what I was going to add, which is the case studies that I think you hear of how people have used platforms can really, really help. And I think it can give some very kind of transferable experiences that people could use as well. Cool. Okay. And finding out more about Learn?
Yeah, so last couple of things really. So when you do start to, I guess you'll identify so many platforms that you might want, have a scoring matrix, again, against that shopping list, use the sandbox or the free trial site, test the reporting functionality and speak to your users. And on that final point, feedback's a free education to excellence, so make sure you gain the feedback. Some of the most successful implementations I've seen have been where the users have been part of that decision-making process. So if you get down to your two favorite systems, you know what, put them in front of some users. If you can't make that decision, bring in the learners. But the feedback, absolutely invaluable from yourself, from your stakeholders, and also from your learners.
I love that. I mean, I'm always talking to people about thinking about yourself as a product owner or product designer, and who are you designing for? And ultimately, it's those learners. So getting involved in the process, yeah, it's a great shout. Sarah, that was super helpful. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. And Teresa, been very patient and really looking forward to what you're going to be talking about. So I know your focus is going to be almost more thinking about what are the trends around learning technologies at the moment. Yeah. So yeah, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Joe. And I'm probably going to cover some of those areas that Sarah was talking about. What are those key tech trends? What's the reality? And then what are some of those deeper questions that you can ask vendors around these? Or looking at the system when you're getting a demonstration, if you decide to do that, what are the things that you should be looking at or noticing? Maybe even without asking questions, if you're doing a bit of that research that Sarah was talking about. In researching myself for developing this session, I came across this blog from Fred Thompson, and I think he neatly sums up how the world of digital technology feels, as does those images that probably represent my face when I both read and then hear some of the stuff that's out there. There's a lot of unnecessary complexity in this world, and I've worked in digital learning since 2003 on the vendor side before I went into corporate learning and development. And I often think, well, what is hype and what is the reality? So I'm going to take us through a few of those digital learning trends, provide some guidance and some of the questions and considerations on each one. And we might play a couple of games of Snowstorm along the way. Now, Sarah mentioned this, and it's in all the research still skills. So let's get started there. It's prevalent before COVID, and unfortunately, like COVID, it's not going away soon. It's there, and it's going to probably stick around for quite a good few years until something else maybe takes its place. So I'd like to play our first round of Snowstorm for this. Do you remember the way we do this? So it's type but don't send. So we'll give you a few seconds. But what comes to mind for you when you think of digital learning and skills?
Right, are we going to go?
Yeah, let's go. What have we got coming through? Okay, not sure how to answer it. What's that from Duncan? Okay, I've got a few coming through there. I think Sarah's touched on some of this. So it's really about the move away from competency models. I've spent a lot of time in my past working on competency models. They're very wieldy. They take a lot of work, and we're moving more to a roles-based approach that's much more flexible and a malleable workforce, because we need to flex and adjust, as we've seen during COVID. I think that's why it's become more important. So some of the additional terms that you'll hear attached to that are reskilling, upskilling. I think we need a click. Sorry, I feel like doing the
Oh,
Chris
no,
Whitty
no,
now. Yeah, click.
you.
Yeah, reskilling, upskilling, taxonomy, and ontology. There's some of the key terms, and I have to keep looking at these and thinking, what do they actually mean? And for me, this means what it doesn't mean. So reskilling is about a professional recycling new skills to optimize their performance. So it might be to shift, to change, to get better. Whereas upskilling is about adapting to a different post within the company. So it could be something completely new. I would have put them the other way around, unless that's my understanding of English, but that's what they mean.
Right.
So it's about creating a more specialised workforce with the former, and with the latter, it's about more versatile workers. If we look at taxonomy next, so that is a hierarchical system. So it's a classification that organises the skills into groups or a cluster of skills. And it's structured and will usually include the skills that are most important to the business goals, with skills definition as well. They're generally levelled. I think Sarah touched on that, and there's normally descriptions on expectations for each level. So it's kind of a competency model on acid, really. It's a bit like that. And then an ontology is that set of those skills, and their relationship between one another. For example, you might have communication, and you've got a set of different skills that are interrelated for that larger skill. So what questions to ask vendors? These are important questions to ask vendors, and Sarah touched on this as well. Can your content be tagged by skill level? So you might have a skills assessment in there. What does that consist of? So if it's leveled, can you then tag the content to a level? And because it's self-rating, beware, largely it's the skills assessments, the self-rating and manager rating, beware of the same biases that exist in any self-reporting instrument, because you've got the Dunning-Kruger effect, which means you think you're more competent than you are. You've also got halo and horns if you're looking at managers. So there's lots of different biases in that. And additionally, it's very well taking it, but then if you want to work up to a different level, so if I'm level 3 in communication skills, for example, how do I want to get up to level 4, 5? And that might be linked to then to your HR system. So as Sarah talked about, you've got to have a lot of links to all of your data and create a skills ecosystem. How do I then get content that's not more of the same, that actually develops me and my career, so that my skills do progress? Because there's also an element of I don't know what I don't know, as well. So how do you establish what you really don't know? And developing a skill framework does take a lot of time. I've worked on them, so I know how much time they take. And the question is that right for your context? Is it right for your business to focus on skills? And what is the problem that you're wanting to solve? Is that the problem you really think you have? Or you might spend a lot of time developing a skills framework without it being useful. If you are interested more in this, I have been doing some more research, and Nesta, if you're in the UK, they've got a skills taxonomy that they've developed with loads of research into job vacancies and the key skills that are in those job vacancies. So it's picked it out using algorithms and machine learning. And that's really useful as a starting point if you were wanting to go down that route. It saves you a lot of time and legwork.
Oh, you said algorithms, machine learning there. I feel
Yeah,
like
I know. I'm going to go into a little bit of that. I'm using some jargon myself.
no, it's good. I'm only joking.
Yeah,
But you would also hope that on the vendor side that they would have done quite a lot of some of this work for you as well. I mean, I know on our side, and think about content partners, there's a lot of work going on around aligning around, but what is the right oncology taxonomy that helps?
Yeah.
And I'd just suggest that maybe getting eyes on the platform structure and how they've approached that is probably quite a good thing for you to do as well.
Yeah, really important point. Thank you, Joe.
Cool. Okay.
That brings me neatly onto content curation, because where there's skills, there's bound to be content curation. You tend to find those together. But a word of caution, which I started to say about this, don't go from content dump overload to a curation dump. We know content curation can be costly, so it can sound so easy and tempting to switch that focus around to curation first. And we hear a lot about from courses to resources, but it's all about the situation and the problem that you are wanting to solve. And there's several learning technologies out there that can help you curate at speed. You'll probably find them in a similar platform with skills. Nevertheless, it still does take time. And I know Sarah and I have worked on a big projects on this before together in the same place, so we know that it does. It's a challenge if you've got geographically spread employees and workforces, because what's available in one language might not be available in another, and also the platform and the modality might not work. And I think you need to be really ruthless with yourself on this. So establish the time it will take you to curate and update the content. Really experiment and be ruthless with yourselves, and look at the technology. How is it going to really help you solve that time? And is it content that is useful? Some of it might be freemium, premium, so there might be a cost implication with some of that content that's gathered as well. And I always harp on about this because we're in learning and development. And if you put a lot of content out there and you think, oh yeah, great, it's consumed, people are going, what's the difference? What's the payoff? What's the outcome? Or how are we getting to the D of L&D, the development? So the same principles apply as any part of designing a user-centered, performance-driven learning experience. You have to add the context. One size doesn't fit all, and I think on your content strategy, it's where you really then need to start thinking like a social marketeer. Have a content strategy, tag it, date it, time it. What most importantly, be clear on what your people can do with the content. How does the system help you to manage all that? Why and how will it help them? And it's really important that there's some method in the system, in the platform, that's going to scaffold and help sense make, because that can be really dumbed down, and you're expecting people that are busy, that have little time to learn, to then make sense of it all. And that's vital to get to the D of L&D. And one last thing on that is quality over quantity is king and queen. It's really about good quality and less content.
And I think there's so many people out there that just go for quantity, right? Thinking that that's going to add value. And it just, I think it overwhelms people. So yeah, I couldn't agree with that marketing bit anymore.
Yeah. And that's what, we found when we've put too much content out there, people are overwhelmed and they don't really know what they should be doing with it. So this brings me on to the next one. These seem to fit in nicely together. Algorithms and adaptive learning. And this is really personalization on another level, if it works. So let's play another game of Snowstorm. Type but don't hit send. What do you understand by algorithms and adaptive learning?
So I was typing out my answer. Should we go?
Yeah, go.
I feel under pressure to make sure I answer this correctly.
It's not about getting it right or wrong. It's
No,
yeah, it's not. It's what do we think about? Is it? It's
anybody
not about
else
right or
out
wrong
there?
answer.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
What do we think about this one, Teresa? AI picking the most relevant learning for an individual.
Yeah, if it works, yeah.
Where can it not work? Do you think? Where can AI almost work against you?
It's where you've got that data. It's that data ecosystem that's really critically important. All the different systems talking to one another, depending on what systems you've got, and it's also going to learn over time. So you need to get users in and get that user data to understand over time if it's the right content that they're getting. So it's again experimenting and finding out, doing that user research all the time.
Totally. I also think what you learned last week isn't predictive of what you want to learn this week as well, right? So if you don't put the learner at the center of that design, I think you can get yourself in real trouble.
I think it goes back to that point I raised at the beginning as well, is you don't know what you don't know. Your Johari window is a key thing, is we might have those blind spots that we don't know. So where do we get that data? How does it establish where the gaps are for us that we really need to work on? And that might be by different methods that you've got in your HR toolkit. So it could be 360s and things like that you filtering in that data as well. Yeah. So there's a lot to think about around that.
Brilliant. And adaptive is different in.
Yeah, so adaptive learning is is where the software and the algorithms optimize the content, like you said, to adjust for learner goals. So like you said, one day I might want to learn something different to what I learned yesterday, but it's going to go around the current state of knowledge and skills. So you've probably got these in the systems where the skills are a big focus. But I'd say look under the bonnet to check what you've been shown is really adaptive. And I said you'll need all of those integrations, and that would cost money and time to do that. So it's thinking from a much sort of longer term strategy on your data, on your content, and on your skills tagging. And I've seen systems that say they're adaptive, but they're not really. They just give more of the same content at the same level. So how are users being tested to demonstrate those skills? So rather than that content consumption, and then how does that content that they're getting change based on their outcomes? So how does it gather that data? It's really quite sophisticated if it's done correctly.
And you need a certain amount of data for it to even become statistically important as well, right? So
you do.
yeah.
And this moves me on to my final one, which is data. So a neat segue. So this is something I started gathering user data in around about, did a huge project when I was at Eon, and I've done that for clients since as well. So around about 2015, I spent about a year with my head in data, and I kept using this phrase from this quote from W. Edwards Deming, more so with my own team. They were the ones that I needed to change their mindset more than anyone. That without data, you're just someone with an opinion. So that data gathering is so important, and I think we've got Hura on as one of our guests today, I think, that's attended. But she and I both read a report last week, quite a small sample, but it's from Hult, and I think EdCast sponsored it. And there was some data in there that only 6%, that was 3 of the people that were respondents to the survey, employ real-time analytics with easy access to it, and only 10% use that data to make data-driven decisions. And so it's really important about are you there sort of from your data maturity that you could start to work in that way. Sarah's spoken about data strategy as well, and it is something we're always criticised about it in L&D, but I think working with different stakeholders that I've done that are not in L&D and looking at how they operate, it's really important to establish the data culture in your organisation, because that's going to affect the value that the organisation places on data-driven decisions and how you use learning data. And it might be an opportunity for you to educate. If it's not happening, you could start to do that and really make a name for yourself in L&D that you're making use of this data to help drive their decisions. And some of the things that I've done is make friends with colleagues who gather and present the data for my stakeholder meetings, and look at how it's used. Do they have data-driven meetings? Is the narrative provided as well as the figures? And there is that opportunity that you can then act differently and change mindsets. I guess there was research that I think I saw again of sort of 2014-15 that really only about, I think it's about 44% of all business meetings so use data to make data-driven decisions. It's about what people think and their views rather than using that data, rather than the opinion. That's why I love that statement. And if you have your strategy overall, and that should be a must, not an if, what data do you and your stakeholders need from the system? What data is going to help you solve those problems that I've been harping on about? And look here, you need to look from the vendor point of view. What data services are they offering? Are there extra costs for all those integrations with your data sources? And there probably will be. For example, looking at your employee experience lifecycle and the data that you're getting from that. And if you're investing in adaptive learning, is that data predictive? Is it going to tell you what's likely to happen next, as well as what's happening now? And what level of customization can you do on your reports and dashboards easily? Do you need to then pay more for that to be configured? And what's the data engine that's being used? Because there are different engines that are under there running that data. So check the vendor's policies. There are extra costs around that data engine. Also, if you're a global organisation, what's the different data requirements in different regions? Because again, at Workers' Council in Germany, they will have really more stricter rules on the data that you can use, and it might you need a different version or a different version of your system and way of data collecting. So that's going to incur more costs. what workarounds do you need? Is there a lot of workarounds that you need to get the kinds of reports, and what capacity do you have to do that, and ability, and is that data real time? And finally, who needs to access the data? And this data part is all about how you start and how you finish, and I might be stating the obvious there, but start with your business strategy and that end goal in mind, and that should be then reflected in the data that you want to get out of your system. And where can you create a workflow? So as Sarah talked about, having that sandbox, test some of those data processes in the sandbox, and decide as well where the importance of data analytics is on those big ticket items. Is it something that you really need? Because you might see some dashboards that look incredible and you get sold on those, but are you going to use all of that data if you're paying for it? So that's where I will finish.
Couldn't agree more. And I think on our side, we quite often see that people just don't use the data that's available. Yeah. And actually, it can completely champion the people using platforms as well. Like if you really track that over time, that's where you're going to see whether you've made the impact or not, and where you can do case studies or be championed internally as well. And I think that does get overused, underutilized. Good. Great. Well, look, thank you so much, both. I'm going to put up a poll, which was actually something which came from the 2022 L&D Global Sentiment, and kind of prior to L&D, just to ask everybody that's on the call, what are your priorities at the moment going into the next period? And so I'm going to launch that now. Love to see what people say. Jack, are there any more questions that came from the floor and that might be good? I know we're a little bit over time, but if anyone's got any last questions, that would be great.
We do actually have one more for Teresa. Just basically, what is the one thing that you look for at a partner when you're selecting a system?
Oh, a few things. I do Google Glassdoor reviews and look at what they say about working for that company. I look at how responsive they are. I look at stability of their employees, roadmap. Really important to look at what their product roadmap is, and do they share it? Can you get involved in shaping that roadmap as well? So might they do some custom work that they can then potentially sell on to their clients so they can commercialize it, and that supports you? Maybe you then pay a lower cost for any custom build. So quite a few things I'll be looking at. Flexibility, and I think as Sarah said, you sometimes don't get that with the much larger vendors, that the mid vendors and the newer entrants to the market often are more flexible and more willing to work with you. So I think is asking a lot of those questions up front. Do they have customer groups, user groups that you can get involved in, and what education they will give you as well in your team.
Brilliant, super insightful. Okay, let's see what this poll says. So it's a bit of an even split, but it seems, skills as kind of expected, reskilling, upskilling, skills related to talent management, how that might then affect kind of personalization and adapting of learning. And those are the things that are coming out. So yeah, very interesting. Thank you all for kind of sharing those, just sharing those on screen now. If no one's got any other questions, then really big thanks to everybody that turned up. Huge thanks, obviously, to both you two as well. So Sarah and Teresa, really appreciate it. Jack, thanks for taking the questions at the end there. And yeah, love to get any feedback from people that have been on the call. And if you are at Learning Technologies, please do come see us. We're at stand C60. Hopefully we'll see Sarah and Teresa there as well. And have a great week of learning, everybody. Over and out. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks so much. See ya. Take care.